Ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. So let's start today's session. So today we are going to discuss about few issues in the decision tree learning. So first of all, we'll see what is inductive bias in ID3 decision tree learning algorithm. Inductive bias. This term, in fact, we have discussed in our unit number 1. So what is inductive bias? Inductive bias is a set of assumptions that together with the training data justify the classifications assigned by the learner to future instances. So bias, in short, inductive bias is the set of assumptions, those we impose while dealing with a learning algorithm. As far as decision trees are considered, given some data set, training data set, we may come up with many decision trees. Those are consistent with respect to the provided data. So the question is, if I am having various decision trees available, then how to select the one out of many possible solutions, right? So we need to select one decision tree that is most suitable. So here comes the role of inductive bias. So here we may impose some kind of assumption that is called as inductive bias for selecting the hypothesis. So what kind of inductive bias we may have? We may say that the shorter trees are preferred over the larger trees. What we mean by this? See, we have seen the trees, how our decision tree looks like. Suppose we are having this tree. So here we are having the leaf node. So we may have something like this, a decision tree, right? And we may have another decision tree as well. Say for example, the another decision tree may look like here is itself is the leaf node, and we are having the leaf node here. So something like this. So obviously, which tree is shorter here? This is one solution and this is another solution. Let us assume. So if we are having two solutions here, how to select the one hypothesis? So the inductive bias in decision tree would be like this. The shorter trees are preferred over the larger trees. So this is tree number 1 is the larger tree. With respect to it is having many levels than this tree number 2. So we may prefer to go with the shorter trees. And the reason is, if we are having the height of the tree that is short, then obviously the time required to reach to the leaf node, that means time required to predict, right, will be smaller than the tree that is having the larger height. So this is the reason for this inductive bias imposed upon the ID3 decision tree algorithm. So the inductive bias here is the shorter trees are preferred over the larger trees. Okay. The next inductive bias might be trees that place high information gain attributes close to the root are preferred over those that do not. What we mean by that? See, here for finding out the decision trees, we are computing the gains, information gains for all the attributes, right? So the trees that place high information gain attributes close to the root node. So here is my root node. It is having this attribute may have some information gain. So if the high information gain attributes are placed nearer to the root node, then such kind of a decision tree can be selected. So these two are the inductive bias assumptions for decision trees, those we may have. So based on these biases, it is possible for us that if we are having more than one solutions, it is possible to pick the one, okay, which will provide us the result. So this was about the inductive bias.
Ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, which is more accurate, shorter tree or a larger tree?
See, the reason why we are saying that the bias that we are imposing is we should prefer to use shorter tree. And the reason is if we are having the shorter tree, then in less amount of time, beginning from the root node, in less amount of time, we can reach to the leaf node because there are less number of comparisons or there are less number of nodes to be traversed till we reach to the leaf node. So the inductive bias that we are having is we are going to prefer the shorter trees because it will give us quick results. If we are having the trees with larger heights, then what will happen? To arrive at the prediction, we need to go through or we need to traverse many number of nodes, decision nodes, right? And it will take more time. And that is why we are having this kind of inductive bias, that if we are having such kinds of trees, one is short, one is having the larger height, then we may prefer the shorter trees than the larger trees. And the reason is we are not looking at the accurate results here, but we are looking at which tree can be traversed in less amount of time. Right? I hope I am clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Fine. So let's proceed with few issues in decision tree learning. So we have identified here 5 issues in decision tree learning. So decision trees are susceptible for overfitting the data. So how to avoid overfitting the data? That is one of the issues that we are going to discuss. Incorporating continuous valued attributes is the another issue. Alternative measures for selecting the attributes, we are going to discuss that issue. Handling training examples with missing attribute values and handling attributes with differing costs. So we are going to look at these 5 issues with respect to decision tree learning. Okay. For this content, we are referring to our textbook Machine Learning by Tom Mischel, right? So for more details, you may please refer to our textbook. So let us see now the first issue, avoiding overfitting the data. So we know what we mean by overfitting. We had at length discussion regarding this concept of overfitting. So what are the possible reasons for overfitting? If there is noise in the data, or if the number of training examples is too small, then ID3 algorithm can produce trees that overfit the training examples. So what are the possible reasons for overfitting here? Noise in the data, and secondly, if the number of training examples is too small, very few training examples are available, then also we may face this problem of overfitting. Okay, so ID3 decision tree algorithm is susceptible for overfitting the data. So what is overfitting? We have at length discussion about overfitting. So let me once again revise what we mean by overfitting the data. So a hypothesis space capital H, a hypothesis small h that belongs to capital H is said to overfit the training data if there exists some alternative hypothesis H dash such that H has smaller error than H dash over the training examples, but H dash has a smaller error than H over the entire distribution of instances. If this is the case, then we say that it is overfitting. Simply, I will give you the example. Suppose once again, if I am having hypothesis H and if I am having hypothesis H dash, right? So if hypothesis H is giving me some error, say E1 for training data, and this H dash is giving me some error E1 dash, right, for training data. This hypothesis H is giving me error E2 for the overall distribution of instances, right? So for the larger data that we are going to test, right, E2 is the error for unseen data, and suppose E2 dash is the error for the same unseen data. We say that this hypothesis H is overfitting. We say that hypothesis H is overfitting if this error E1 is less than E1 dash. So for training, my hypothesis H is producing the error which is less, sorry, this is E1 dash. So E1 is the error for hypothesis H and E1 dash is the error for hypothesis H dash for training. So so the training error for hypothesis H is less than training error for hypothesis H dash. But in general, if we generalize hypothesis H and H dash both, then this error E2 is greater than E2 dash. If this is the case, then we say that H is overfitting. So it works well for training data, but it will not work well for generalized data, right? That is what we mean by overfitting. We have discussed this concept earlier. This is once again the revision. Okay, so in decision tree we may come across such kind of overfitting. So the question here is how to avoid overfitting of the data. So we are having several approaches to avoid overfitting of the data in case of decision tree. So first approach is stop growing the tree earlier before it reaches the point where it perfectly classifies the training data. So we go on building a decision tree. Suppose we are using ID3 algorithm and we go on building the decision tree. So we try to make use of more and more number of attributes in our data set till we reach to the stopping criteria. Okay, and once we reach to the stopping criteria, we say that we have built our decision tree, right? And this decision tree works well with our training data. So it classifies the training data well. Okay, but if we would like to avoid overfitting of the data, then we should stop growing the tree earlier, before it actually reaches the point where it perfectly classifies the training data. Right? So that is the first approach that we may have. Approach 2 says that allow the tree to overfit the data. So we may reach to the stopping criteria and we are allowing the tree to overfit the data. And then after building the tree, we may apply a technique called as post-pruning. Right? So we may apply the technique of post-pruning to prune the tree afterwards. So in the second approach, we allow the tree to overfit the data, and after getting the tree, we apply the technique called as post-pruning, right, to avoid the overfitting of the data. We are not going into the details of these approaches. I just want you to know what are the issues in decision tree and what are the tentative techniques to avoid those or to deal with those issues. Right? We are not going into the more details of these approaches. Right? But you may have one question in mind. So, how to determine the correct tree size? So what would be the correct tree size for our decision tree? Either we may stop growing the tree early, or we may allow the overfitting the data and we may use the post pruning of the tree. But what should be the tree size? Okay, so to determine appropriately the tree size, we come across the approach wherein we are having two data sets, training and validation. So we are making use of training data set and the validation data set. So we are using all the available data for training, but we are applying one statistical test to estimate whether expanding a particular node is likely to produce more accurate results. I'll repeat. What we are going to do? We are going to make use of all available data for training. But while expanding a node, we are going to apply one statistical test. That test may be the chi-square test. You might be aware of this test in statistics. So we may apply this test and we may estimate whether expanding a particular node is likely to produce the improvement in the result with respect to the training data set. If yes, then only we are going to expand, otherwise we are not going to expand that node. Okay, and one more consideration is we are making use of the minimum description length principle. We are not going into the details of all these. This is just for your information. So for selecting the appropriate size of the decision tree, we are having this approach. First thing is we should have training and validation data sets, separate training and separate validation data sets, and while expanding a particular node, we are having one statistical test known as chi-square test, so that we can estimate whether expansion further will result in improved results or not. If expansion will provide us improved results, then only we are going to expand. Otherwise, we are not going to expand. Okay. So, further, let me give you some hint about the pruning task. So, Reduced error pruning is the technique. So what we are doing here is, we are going to, suppose we are having this decision tree available with us. Okay, so what we are going to do is, we are going to consider each decision node in the tree, and for each decision node in the tree we are going to apply pruning. So what is pruning actually? As I stated earlier, for avoiding, in the second approach of avoiding overfitting, what we are going to do is, we are going to allow our decision tree to grow completely, and then we are going to apply post pruning technique. So pruning is removing few of the nodes from the decision tree after we build complete decision tree. So if I am having this complete decision tree, in pruning what I am going to do is, if possible, I am going to remove few of the nodes from this decision tree. So removing, in pruning what we do is, we are going to remove the subtree rooted at a particular node and making it a leaf node. What we mean by that? Suppose I want to remove this subtree. This is a subtree. This entire is the subtree. This entire is the subtree. Okay. This also is the subtree. This also is the subtree. So at every node, we'll check whether we can prune that, whether we can remove that subtree. So if we decide to remove this subtree, then what we are going to do is, we are going to remove this entire subtree, and at this place we are going to put the leaf node. Instead of this entire subtree, we are going to put a leaf node, right? And in that leaf node, the most common classification label that is available at the data set, subset of the data set, we are having subset of the data set at every decision node that we know. So if I am removing this entire subtree, then whatever is the data set available at this level, at this node, whichever is the most common label, classification label of the training examples, I will pick that label and I will replace this entire subtree with a leaf node having that common label here. Right? This is one way of pruning. Okay? And please remember that nodes we are going to remove only if the resulting tree performs no worse than the original tree over the validation set. Once again, I'll repeat. If I want to remove this node, if I'm going to apply pruning at this node, I will apply pruning at this node only if the resulting tree performs no worse than the original one for the validation data set. Right? If we want to go with such kind of a technique, pruning technique, then we should ensure that we are having enough data for training and validation sets. So if we are not having enough samples or enough examples in our data set, then it is not possible for us to apply such kind of pruning technique. So the limitation of this pruning technique is, we should have enough data that can be partitioned into training set and the validation set. If we are not having enough data, then it is not possible for us to apply this kind of pruning technique. Right? So pruning is simply, just remember, pruning is simply removing a subtree, provided removing the subtree will not worsen the original tree, the result of or the performance of the original tree. Okay, so this is simply the meaning of pruning the tree. So once we have created the tree, we may go for pruning the tree by making use of this algorithm of post pruning by removing few of the nodes if possible, right? And this will help us to avoid the overfitting of the data. So we are done with the techniques to avoid overfitting the data. The next issue that we are going to discuss is incorporating continuous valued attributes. So what we mean by that? So far, whatever examples that we have discussed, we were using the categorical values for the attributes. What we mean by that, categorical values of the attributes? See here, in our example, we had the attribute like outlook, temperature, then what else we had? Attribute windy and humidity, right? And based on these attributes, we were predicting whether to play tennis. Correct? So this was our target attribute. Play tennis was our target. And these were the attributes. So whatever example we discussed earlier, we had some discrete values for these attributes. So for outlook, we had 3 values: sunny, then what we had? Sunny, rainy and overcast. These were 3 values for outlook. For temperature also, we had few values: temperature, cool, mild, something like that. Okay. So we had some categorical values, some discrete values, right? But sometimes it may happen that the attribute values are continuous valued attribute, continuous values. So temperature is written as, say for example, 40 degrees, 33 degrees, 10 degrees, something like that. So these are the continuous values for temperature instead of the categorical values that the temperature is mild, temperature is cool, something like that. Okay. So if we are having such kind of continuous valued attributes in our data set, so how to deal with such kinds of continuous values? So I'll just give you one example. Suppose we are considering temperature as the continuous valued attribute and the target is play tennis, yes or no. Okay, and let us assume that we are having some temperature values like 40, 48, 60, some randomly I am picking up these temperature values in Fahrenheit, 80, 90, something like that. And associated with these temperature values, we are having the class also. No, suppose this is no, this is yes, this is yes, this is yes, and this is no. Let us assume that we are having such kind of a data. Okay, so if we are having such kind of continuous values for the attribute, what we are going to do is we are going to pick some threshold, and based on that threshold, these continuous values or these attributes having the continuous values, we are going to convert it into a discrete set of intervals using that threshold. Say for example, if we pick the threshold, say 50, then we may say that the temperature greater than 50 will be high temperature and the temperature less than 50 would be the low temperature, something like that. So the actual continuous values we are going to convert into the discrete set of intervals using some threshold, right? So once again, how to select this threshold so that we can convert these values into some continuous values into some discrete values. So we are having one strategy to select the threshold also. So threshold that produces the greatest information gain, we are going to pick that as the threshold. And practically, how we are going to do that? Say for example, whatever are the continuous values we have, we are going to arrange those values like this in ascending order. So 40, 48, 60, 72, 80, 90. These are the values arranged in ascending order. And associated with these values, we are having the target attribute values also. So while selecting the threshold, what we are going to do is, we are going to look at two consecutive continuous values such that the labels are changed. So 48 is the value. After 48 we are having 60 and there is change in the target attribute. So we are going to use these two values. Similarly, one more instance we have in this example. Here 80 and 90 are two consecutive temperature values such that the label gets changed here from yes to no and here from no to yes. So what we are going to do is, we are going to find out the average of these two values. So average of 48 plus 60. What would be the average? 48 plus 60 by 2. So the average comes out to be 54. Right? So average of these two. And average of these two values, 80 and 90. So it comes out to be 85. Correct? Now, what we are going to do is, for these values, we are going to find out the information gain. And whichever value is giving us the highest information gain, we are going to pick that value as our threshold to discretize the continuous values. Right? So in this case, whichever is 54 or 85, whichever is giving me the highest gain, information gain, I would be picking up that threshold, right? So that I can categorize these temperature, continuous temperature values. So this is a common procedure that is being used in decision tree, right? So if the attribute is having continuous values, that attribute is being discretized first and then that is being used for building the decision tree. In fact, while practical implementation, we may go with some libraries. We are having some packages like sklearn or scikit-learn. Okay, in such kinds of packages, all these machine learning algorithms are being implemented and directly the library functions are available to be implemented. So in sklearn, we are having the decision tree library also. So we may use this decision tree library, and in this library, in fact, if we give the data, training data, wherein we are having the attributes with continuous values, this library takes care of all these implementations. So internally that library converts the continuous values in discrete values and then those will be used for building the decision tree. So why I am explaining all this, even though we are having available the libraries, machine learning libraries, those will help us to implement these machine learning algorithms directly. We should know what actually is happening inside that algorithm, and that is why I am explaining you all those details. So this was the second issue, and let us go to the next issue now. Alternative measures for selecting the attributes. So in ID3 algorithm, we have seen the attribute that will help us to pick our decision node. And what was that attribute, or what was that parameter? It was information gain. So in ID3 algorithm, what we did, we computed information gain for each attribute, and whichever is the attribute that is providing us the highest information gain, we are picking up that attribute as the decision node, right? So this is one way of selecting the attribute, but there are several alternative ways as well. So what are those alternative ways? We are having gain ratio and split information. So sometimes instead of making use of the information gain, we may use gain ratio and split information, right? I'm not going into the details. I'm just giving you some additional insights. So it is not mandatory always to make use of gain for selecting the attribute for the decision node, but instead we may go with some other alternative measures. One of such measures is the gain ratio. Okay, another measure is the Gini index, right? So we may go with this Gini index instead of the gain. And as I stated, if you go for using the libraries in sklearn for implementation of decision tree, it is possible for us to provide the parameter which measure you would like to use for selecting the attributes. Whether you would like to use gain, whether you would like to use Gini index, and so on. Right? So it is possible for us to select whichever kind of attribute, or rather whichever kind of parameter we would like to make use of for selecting the attribute as the decision node. Right? So this is only for your information. Instead of gain that we have used in ID3 algorithm, we may use gain ratio, or we may use this Gini index. Okay, fine. So the next issue that we are going to discuss is handling the training examples with missing attribute values. What we mean by that? Let us assume that we are having the training data like outlook, temperature, humidity, and windy are the attributes, and we are having several training examples provided. Sometimes it may happen that for few of the instances, for few of the training examples, the values are not known. Say for example, here the outlook value. What is the outlook value? Outlook values are sunny, rainy, and overcast. But for a particular instance, we are not knowing the outlook value. And if we do not know the value of a particular attribute, it is denoted in the data set as null value. Okay, not known. Sometimes it may happen that the temperature is not known. So for that particular instance, the temperature value is the null value. Okay, so how to handle the training examples with the missing attribute values? Wherever we are having these null values, meaning these values are not known. These are the missing attribute values. And if these values are not known, then how to proceed with building the decision tree? So we need to handle such examples in our training data set. So what are the ways to handle these missing attribute values. So if we are dealing with, say, node n, and that node n is testing the attribute A, and for some of the example, the attribute value A is missing. So what we can do is, we can assign the most common of values of A for that particular example. So whichever is the most common value of A, that value is being replaced at that null value for that particular example. This is 1A, most common value. Another way to handle such kinds of missing values is like we assign the most common value of A among the other examples with same target value. What does this mean? In the first approach, we, irrespective of whatever is the target value, what we are going to do is, if there is a missing value, suppose I am having example 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and so on, and suppose I am having this attribute A and this is missing value for instance number 3. Then what I am going to do in approach 1, I am going to pick the most common out of all those 5, right? And whichever is the most common value for A, that I'll be replacing at this place. Okay? In second approach, what we are saying is, for these all the examples, we are having the target known. Suppose here is S, here is no, yes, yes, no, something like that. So for this particular instance where we are having missing value, that is null, the target attribute is yes. Correct? The target attribute is yes. So what we will do is, instead of considering the most common value out of all the instances, what we will do is, for this instance having the null value for attribute A, the target value is yes. So we will look at only those instances having the target value yes, and we'll pick only those examples having the target value yes, and out of those instances we will pick the most common value. So in first approach, irrespective of the target value, we are considering the all instances and we are picking up the most common value. But in second approach, we consider this target value and we are going to filter out our data based on that target value, and out of that subset of the data, we are going to pick the most common value of A and we will replace this null with that value. Got it? Let us go to the last issue, handling attributes with differing costs. So sometimes in the data set, we may have different costs for different attributes, right? And sometimes it is useful to consider those costs as well while selecting our decision parameter. So if we are using gain as our decision parameter, and if in our data set we are having various attributes and all those attributes are associated with different costs. What I mean by costs? Costs might be the monetary costs, or the costs might be the cost those will be more comfortable. For example, if I am having a data set that deals with some medical data, okay, so for example, I am having the data set wherein I am having temperature of the patient, I am having some biopsy result of the patient, okay, suppose I am having the pulse, for the patient. I am having some blood test reports, something like that. So associated with every attribute, I may have some cost. Okay, this cost might be the monetary cost, or this cost might be the cost to patient comfort. So if I am having such kind of a parameter associated with my data, then instead of making use of gain as my parameter for selecting the decision node, I may come up with this particular expression that will replace my gain. So gain square divided by cost. Okay, or sometimes we may make use of this. Okay, so only essence is if in my data set I am having the cost associated with different attributes, I may replace my original gain parameter with such kinds of expression. That's all. We are not going into the details, right? So this is how we are having the 5 issues in the decision tree, and in brief I explained you how to handle those issues or how to deal with those issues. I hope you must have understood at least a little about those issues. We are not going into the details of all those issues, right? But whenever you are making use of a particular library for implementing decision tree, that library makes use of, or that library deals with all those issues to provide you the appropriate solution. Okay. So with this, we have completed discussion about decision trees, and also we have completed the discussion with respect to unit number 2. So with this, we are going to conclude our unit number 2. So let us see what we have learned in this unit number 2. Initially, we have gone through the concepts of simple and multiple regression. We dealt with the concepts of gradient descent and normal equations. So gradient descent is the optimization algorithm that we used with regression, and also the alternative method we have discussed for regression, and that was the normal equations. We have compared actually the gradient descent method with normal equation method, when to use gradient descent and when to use normal equations. After detailed discussion of regression, we had discussed the logistic regression algorithm, wherein we used the sigmoid function, right? And as I stated, logistic regression is commonly being used for classification. Okay, we had detailed discussion about logistic regression. Also, we discussed the term regularization, and this regularization is once again being used to reduce overfitting of the data. Okay, and finally in this unit we discussed the decision tree algorithm, typically the ID3 algorithm. We had a discussion of this algorithm both for classification as well as regression, and we looked at few of the examples, right? Further, under applications or the case studies, I'll be giving you some exercises or some case studies for which you need to provide the solution. Okay, so in essence, in this unit number 2, we have covered few mechanisms, few algorithms for regression and few algorithms for classification. Namely, we discussed simple and multiple regression, we discussed logistic regression, and we discussed decision tree algorithm. I hope you must have understood all those concepts, and I will appeal all of you to once again go through the content. Okay, today you will be having a quiz based on this decision tree that we have learned. I'll be posting the link for the quiz. If you have any doubts, please let me know. Otherwise, we are going to conclude. Any doubts? Yes? So you once again go through all these concepts, right? And if you have any kind of doubt, please let me know. In the next session, we are going to start unit number 3. Okay, wherein we are going to learn few more interesting machine learning algorithms. Right? So let's stop today. Thank you.